You're tuned in to One Big Question with Renee Smith. I'm your host, Renee, and today is April 21st, 2025. Yes, the coffee is hot, the thoughts are deep, and I'm so glad you pressed play. Now, if you're new here, first off, welcome to the fam. Around here, we take one big, juicy, thought-provoking, sometimes life-flipping question, and we dig into it. No fluff, no filter, just real talk, real stories, and a little wisdom along the way. So get comfy, grab your drink of choice, and let's get into today's big question. Midday on Monday, church bells across Italy began to toll. Pope Francis was dead. Not even 24 hours had passed since he had made a surprise appearance on the balcony overlooking St. Peter's Square, blessing the 35,000 people gathered to celebrate Easter at the Vatican. Pope was breathing on his own, without oxygen tubes, despite being told by his doctors to spend 2 months convalescing after 38 days in hospital with double pneumonia. Over the past 2 weeks, Francis had done what he had always done, received visitors and met people from every walk of life. When he appeared on Easter Sunday, the crowd below erupted in cheers as he appeared. Then it fell silent. "Dear brothers and sisters, I wish you a happy Easter," he said, his voice heavy with effort. They were to be his final words in public. "I think people could feel something, as if they could tell it was the last time they'd see him," said Mauro, a Rome resident who was in St. Peter's Square for Easter Mass and had now returned to pay his respects. Usually everyone shouts, "Long live the Pope." This time it was much quieter than usual. There was maybe more respect for his suffering. "He blessed us, but his voice was a husk," a man called Alberto told the BBC. "I think he was giving us his last goodbye." Doctors who treated Francis at Rome's Gemelli Hospital had prescribed a regimen of complete rest, but it was never likely that a typically active pope who spent much of his papacy meeting people would keep to that. Francis had already made it clear he wanted to be back in the Vatican in time for Easter, as soon as the specialists treating him explained that his health issues would not be resolved quickly. For Christians, Easter is even more important than Christmas as it symbolizes a core tenet of their faith, the resurrection of Christ, 3 days after his nailing to the cross. Before he was discharged on March 23rd, Francis waved to crowds from the hospital too, and then headed back to his quarters in the Casa Santa Marta guest house he had made his home. His medical team said all he needed was oxygen, and convalescing there was better than hospital with all its infections. Easter was just 3 weeks away, and as it approached, the Pope's schedule became increasingly busy. He met King Charles and Queen Camilla at the Casa San Marta, and then appeared on the Vatican balcony for Palm Sunday 4 days later on April 13th, mingling with a crowd of 20,000 people in St. Peter's Square, against doctors' advice. Last Thursday, as he had done many times previously and as he used to do in his native Argentina before becoming Pope, he made a visit to the Regina Coeli jail in Rome where he spent half an hour meeting prisoners, and he was greeted by applause from staff and guards as he arrived in a wheelchair. In previous years, he had washed inmates' feet, mirroring what Jesus is said to have done with his disciples the night before his death. "This year I'm unable to do that, but I can and want to still be near you," he said in a feeble voice to the dozens of prisoners who had come to see him and who cheered him on as he toured the jail. "We're so lucky. Those on the outside don't get to see him, and we do," one man told Italian media. As he was leaving the prison, Francis was asked by a journalist how he would experience Easter this year. "Whichever way I can," he replied. And on Sunday, he kept his promise. He held a short meeting with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance before appearing before the crowds in St. Peter's Square as the crowd below erupted in cheers. He made his final blessing, the Urbi et Orbi address in Latin, meaning to the city and to the world. Then, Archbishop Diego Ravelli read out a speech written by the Pope as Francis sat silently beside him. Then, to everyone's surprise, he descended down to St. Peter's Square, where he was driven around in an open-top Pope Mobile, the distinctive little white Mercedes-Benz used by popes to meet crowds. A camera followed him around as he raised his arm to bless the faithful lining the sunny square, and a few babies were brought up closer to him. It was the last time the world saw him alive. Watching Francis's blessing on Sunday, Alberto from Rome felt he would not last much longer, although the Pope's death still came as a shock. "I didn't feel happy seeing him. I could tell he was in pain," he said. "But it was an honor to see him one last time." The Pope's rooms were a far cry from the opulence of the Vatican quarters typically destined to pontiffs, which Francis had turned down at the start of his papacy, saying he felt the need to live among people. "If I lived by myself, maybe even a bit in isolation, it would be of no use to me," he said back then. In the coming days, cardinals from across the world will be staying at Casa Santa Marta as they gather in Rome for the conclave that will choose Francis' successor. Outside, in the bright sunshine in St. Peter's Square, people mingled with priests and friars under the imposing basilica. A group of nuns clad in gray and white glared at a man who, headphones in, was dancing around the square. "No respect," they tooted. The same large screens that broadcast the Pope's blessing for Easter now displayed a photo of Francis smiling and a notice that a special rosary was being held for him 12 hours after his death. It would allow Catholics near and far to pray for their Pope and thank him for celebrating one last Easter with them. U.S. stocks and the dollar plunged again as President Donald Trump intensified his attacks on U.S. central bank boss, calling him a major loser for not lowering interest rates. In a social media post, Trump called on Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell to cut interest rates preemptively to help boost the economy, saying Powell had been consistently too slow to respond to economic developments. "There can be a slowing of the economy unless Mr. Too late, a major loser lowers interest rates now," he wrote. Trump's criticism of Powell's handling of the U.S. economy comes as his own plans for tariffs have driven a stock market sell-off and raised fears of economic recession. The president's intensifying clash with Powell, whom he named to lead the Fed during his first term, has added to the market turmoil. The S&P 500, which tracks 500 of the biggest U.S. companies, fell roughly 2.4% on Monday. It has lost roughly 12% of its value since the start of the year. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 2.5% and has dropped about 10% so far this year, while the Nasdaq fell more than 2.5% and is down roughly 18% since January. Though the dollar and U.S. government bonds are typically considered safe assets in times of market turmoil, they have not escaped the recent turbulence. The dollar index, which measures the strength of the dollar against a set of currencies including the euro on Monday, fell to its lowest level since 2022. Interest rates on U.S. government debt also rose, as investors demanded higher returns for holding treasuries. Trump's criticism of Powell dates back to his first term in office, when he also reportedly discussed firing him. Since winning the election, he has urged Powell to lower borrowing costs. The latest criticism follows Powell's warnings that Trump's import taxes were likely to drive up prices and slow the economy. Trump last week called publicly for Powell to be fired, writing on social media on Thursday, "Powell's termination cannot come fast enough." Such a move would be controversial and legally questionable given a tradition of independence at the bank. Powell last year told reporters he did not believe the president had the legal authority to remove him. But one of Trump's top economic advisors confirmed that officials were studying the option on Friday, when the stock market in the U.S. was closed for trading. Snow leopards cannot growl. So when we step towards one of these fierce predators, she's purring. Lovely, as she's called, was orphaned and rescued 12 years ago in Pakistan-administered Gilgit-Baltistan. After years of relying on staff to feed her, she does not know how to hunt in the wild and cannot be set free. "If we release her, she would just go attack a farmer's sheep and get killed," Lovely's caretaker, Thesib Hussain, tells us. Despite laws protecting them, between 221 to 450 snow leopards are killed each year, the Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF, says, which has contributed to a 20% decline in the global population over the past 2 decades. More than half of these deaths were in retaliation for the loss of livestock. Now, scientists estimate that just 4,000 to 6,000 snow leopards are left in the wild, with roughly 300 of these in Pakistan, the third largest population in the world. To try and reverse these worrying trends, the WWF, with the help of Pakistan's Lahore University of Management Sciences, LUMS, has developed cameras powered by artificial intelligence, AI. Their aim is to detect a snow leopard's presence and warn villagers via text message to move their livestock to safety. Tall, with a solar panel mounted on top, the cameras are positioned high among barren and rugged mountains at nearly 3,000 meters, 9,843 feet. Snow leopard territory, says Asif Iqbal, a conservationist from WWF Pakistan. He walks us a few more steps and points to tracks on the ground. These are pretty new. Asif hopes this means the camera has recorded more evidence that the AI software, which allows it to differentiate between humans, other animals, and snow leopards, is working. The WWF is currently testing 10 cameras deployed across 3 villages in Gilgit-Baltistan. It has taken 3 years to train the AI model to detect these categories with impressive, if not perfect, accuracy. Once we're back down the mountain, Asif pulls up his computer and shows me a dashboard. There I am in a series of GIFs. Correctly detects I'm a human. But as we scroll down the list, I come up again, and this time I'm listed as both a human and an animal. I'm wearing a thick white fleece, so I forgive the program. Then Asif shows me the money shot. It's a snow leopard recorded a few nights prior in night vision. He pulls up another one from the week before. It's a snow leopard raising its tail against a nearby rock. It's a mother leopard, looks like she's marking her territory, Asif says. Setting up the cameras in rocky, high-altitude areas took a lot of trial and error. The WWF went through several types of batteries until it found one that could withstand the harsh winters. A specific paint was chosen to avoid reflecting light as animals pass by. If the cellular service fails in the mountains, the device continues recording and capturing data locally. But the team has had to accept there are some problems they simply cannot solve. While the camera lens is protected by a metallic box, they've had to replace solar panels damaged by landslides. It is not just the technology that has caused problems. Getting the local community's buy-in has also been a challenge. First, some were suspicious and doubted whether the project could help them or the snow leopards. We noticed some of the wires had been cut, Asif says. People had thrown blankets over the cameras. The team also had to be mindful of the local culture and the emphasis on women's privacy. Cameras had to be moved because women were walking by too often. Some villages still have yet to sign consent and privacy forms, which means the technology cannot be rolled out in their area just yet. The WWF wants a binding promise that local farmers will not give poachers access to the footage. Sitara lost all 6 of her sheep in January. She says she had taken them to graze on land above her home, but that a snow leopard attacked them. It was 3 to 4 years of hard work raising those animals, and it all ended in one day, she says. The loss of her livelihood left her bedridden for several days. When asked if she is hopeful the AI cameras could help in the future, she replies, "My phone barely gets any service during the day, how can a text help?" At a gathering of village elders, leaders of the Khyber village explain how attitudes have changed over the years, and that a growing proportion of their village understands the importance of snow leopards and their impact on the ecosystem. According to the WWF, snow leopards hunt ibex and blue sheep, which stops these animals from overgrazing and helps to preserve grasslands so villagers can feed their livestock. But not all are convinced. One local farmer questions the benefits of the animals. "We used to have 40 to 50 sheep, now we've only got 4 or 5, and the reason is the threat from snow leopards and from ibex eating the grass," he says. Climate change also has a part to play in why some feel threatened by snow leopards. Scientists say warming temperatures have led villagers to move their crops and livestock to higher areas in the mountains, encroaching on snow leopards' own habitat, making livestock more of a target. Whether the villagers are convinced by the conservation message or not, the WWF tells us legal penalties have served as a strong deterrent in recent years. 3 men were jailed in 2020 after killing a snow leopard in Hopper Valley, about a 2-hour drive from Khyber. One of them had posted photos of himself with the dead animal on social media. While those involved in the camera project are hopeful their AI devices can have an impact, they know they cannot be the sole solution. In September, they are going to start trialing smells, sounds, and lights at the camera sites to try to deter snow leopards from moving on to nearby villages, putting themselves and livestock in jeopardy. therapy, which uses virtual technology, is being tested as a means of supporting teenagers with anxiety and those who struggle to attend school. Cardiff Youth Service, part of Cardiff Council's Education Department, has helped to test and develop a mobile app which uses augmented reality (AR) as an intervention for anxiety and social isolation. Initial findings suggest the technology, which will be piloted in some schools in Cardiff and Swansea, has resulted in an increase in social connection and reduced levels of anxiety. The Children's Commissioner for Wales said any intervention which could engage young people and help their emotional well-being was to be welcomed. AR is an interactive experience where your real-world environment is augmented, added to, or enhanced using computer-generated content. Counselor Angela McMillan, who developed the AR therapy app, said the idea came from support sessions with young people in the South Wales valleys who had been struggling to attend school due to anxiety and social isolation. "I'm really curious as to how we can use technology for good," she said. "Instead of thinking of it as something we do by ourselves, how might we use technology where we are then able to share that with the person next to us?" The app uses gaming technology to allow a young person to design a flower and choose a structure to support its growth and the weather conditions. Users can then superimpose the digital images onto their physical surroundings using their device. What we found was young people were using the devices to move around their physical space but also interacting with each other in a playful way, and we know that play is incredibly important for child development, said Ms. McMillan. A group of young people who are supported by Cardiff Youth Service were the first to test the AR app. Lily, 16, said, "It's easy to use because you can separate it from yourself. It's easier to look at your emotions from an outside perspective. I think it could be helpful for a lot of people. If someone didn't really like talking, then it can be like an icebreaker to open up conversations with their counselor. I think it would be particularly useful for people with social anxiety." Jonas, 15, said, "The thoughts of the day's experiences are going through my mind as I'm choosing the different things. It's creative, and I've never seen something like this before. It is hoped the technology will help certain individuals, particularly those who are neurodivergent, to feel more comfortable using images to express how they are feeling. We're just about to start some pilots in schools in Swansea and Cardiff. What we have seen so far in our initial pilots is an increase in social connection," said Ms. McMillan. "I think a key element of this is that if we feel a sense of belonging, that improves our well-being and the way we want to interact with the world. A byproduct of that might be that young people want to go back into education or attend that in different ways." The Children's Commissioner for Wales, Rocio Cifuentes, said school attendance remained a big problem, as the number of children missing more than 10% of their schooling had doubled since the pandemic. "There are multiple complex reasons for this, but we know emotional mental health and well-being does play a part, and school anxiety is common," Ms. Cifuentes said. "I think it's really important to be considering any intervention which is evidence-based and is showing to be effective, but I also think it's important to listen to children and young people and what they need. The world is evolving, technology is evolving, and I think where schools can use that technology effectively to support children and young people's attendance, that's to be welcomed." Cardiff Council said young people had been given a voice and had valuable input in developing this tool, which provides a way for them to communicate using an approach that they feel comfortable with. And that's a wrap on today's episode of One Big Question with Renee Smith. I hope today's conversation sparked some thoughts, made you laugh a little, or maybe even helped you see something in a new light. You never know where asking one big question can take you, right? Asterisk. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to follow, rate, and share it with that one friend who always has a theory about everything. Yeah, you know the one. And hey, if you've got a big question of your own, shoot it my way. I just might tackle it in an upcoming episode. I'm Renee Smith, and I'll catch you next time. Until then, stay curious, stay bold, and never stop asking big questions.